Here at the base of the rigging toolbox we have some extra tools which are just quick little tools that don't specifically fit with any other kind of setting here. Very simple and quick to use, but also quite useful. We have of course got the hide and lock buttons here, so you can have an item selection of stuff and you can quickly hide it or lock it or unlock it and unhide it, as you can toggle there. Pretty straightforward. We then have the RPR, Orient Hierarchy, and Set RL buttons. First of all, let's see Orient Hierarchy. This is essentially the same as Maya's Orient Joints tool, and it allows you to orient a hierarchy of items to point at one another. As we see here, we have this little branch of joints, but what I'm going to do is just take them and put them back into Z-axis mode there, and you can see that of course, whilst they are in a little hierarchy, they haven't been turned to face one another in that hierarchy, they're just positioned out. We can take any old bone, add one to it, and rather than rotating its parent to get it into position nicely like that, it's sometimes quicker just to be able to grab the bone or the joint and just sort of push it where you want to go. Laying out bones in layout via adding a bone, rotating it, adding a child, rotating it, can sometimes be a bit of a long-winded task. Thus we have Orient Hierarchy. Simply select all of the items in the hierarchy that you wish to be oriented and click on Orient Hierarchy. You'll get this little option pop up which allows you to define how you want the bank to be set for these items. Let's just cancel out of that for a moment, and what I'm going to do is come and put some bank rotation on one or two of these bones here, so they've got a bit of bank value, as you can see there. Let us select the entire hierarchy, click Orient, we'll leave bank as current and click OK. We can see that the items are now oriented to one another, and those items that we banked, we can see have of course maintained the banking that they had set in. If we grab the hierarchy again, go back to Orient, we can click 0 for the bank, and when we click OK, we see that every item has had its bank zeroed out during the orientation. Alternatively, we can use Auto, which will try and auto-orient the bank. Depending on how the hierarchy has been laid out, sometimes this works well, sometimes it doesn't. Let's have a look here. We'll click it, and we see that some of these items do indeed get a small amount of bank twist to try and level them back out again. Of course, if you try it in one mode and you're not happy with the result, you can just go back and orient the hierarchy using a different mode. Do notice that when items do become oriented, they orient to point at their first child. This bone, for instance, has two immediate children here, bone 3 and bone 5, and you can see of course that it has pointed at its first child. We could change the ordering here in the scene editor, so now this bone over there is the first child, and you'll see that if we come back to Orient Hierarchy, we'll go back to the auto mode, then we get this effect instead. Do notice that the Orient Hierarchy tool here is not specific only to bones, even though we've used the bones there as an example. It will work with any hierarchy of any kind of item, bones, nulls, lights, what have you. Here I have a chain of cameras parented together, and if I orient hierarchy them, you can see that they will indeed orient correctly. So in that respect, the tool is a little more versatile than Maya's Orient Joints, which of course only works on joint selection. But back to the bones here, and we can see these other two tools, the first of which is a bones only tool, Set RL, Set Rest Length, because once we have got bones oriented to one another properly like this, you ideally often want to join them up and not of course have to go fiddling with the rest length option like this to get them to meet. What you can do is simply select any number of bones, click Set RL, and their rest lengths will be set appropriately. You can notice that when you do use the Set Rest Length command on bones that are at the ends of things and don't have children, then their rest lengths will set down automatically to 100 millimeters. If you weren't wanting this to happen, then you would of course just omit them from the selection when you were doing the set rest length. As we can see here, if I set all bones back to a 1 meter rest length, I choose not to include those two in the selection. Then when I set RL, we get those ones left alone. The final tool then is RPR, which is record pivot rotation. Having aligned your hierarchy, such as your bones here, you may wish to record their pivots. Normally, recording pivot rotation can only be done one item at a time. The RPR tool here will work on multiple item selection, and as you can see, all items have now been recorded pivot back to 0, 0, 0. Of course, this tool also works on any item type, not just bones. So if I come back to my oriented set of cameras here, I can also RPR those, and we see that their pivots have also been recorded. So there we have it, some quick, handy, simple little tools available down in the extras panel here on the Rigging Toolbox.